For the last 5 or so years, the PC platform has really improved a lot when it comes to JRPGs. In fact, I would even go so far as to say that PC and Steam in specific have become a fantastic JRPG platform. The question though is, what are some of the best JRPGs available on PC as of 2020? And today we're going to be doing just that as we explore the top 15 best JRPGs available on PC right now. Now do keep in mind that this is only my opinion and yours may be completely different, and if that is the case, let me know what some of your favorites are in the comments below so others can discover those games as well. With that said though, before we do get started, I do want to go over the definition of what I'm considering a JRPG in this list because everybody views JRPGs slightly different from one another. For this list, I'm going to make it as simple as possible. So if a game is developed in Japan and it's an RPG, I'm going to include it, even if it does have some Western influence. Now with that out of the way, let's get right into the list. To start off the list, we have an old-time classic, GRANDIA HD. One thing about old JRPGs is that they have aged incredibly well with their pixel art and their sprites, and GRANDIA HD is a prime example of this. Though I will say it is quite a bit different than other 90s JRPGs. There is voice acting in this game, and that may surprise a few people, but it's done surprisingly well. It also has a bit of a 3D camera that can make towns a little bit more impressive, though the camera can be annoying at times when objects block your path, but for the most part, they did do a good job here as well. It's a typical coming-of-age story, which is enjoyable mainly because the characters are so charming and lovable in this game, but I think the combat is really where it excels at. See, the thing is, positioning on the battlefield is actually important in this game, and it has a really fun magic system. If you are in the mood for an old-school classic RPG with a good combat system, GRANDIA HD would be a great choice. Code Vein is actually the newest game on this list, and one that I've seen a lot of people overlook or simply believe it's just another Dark Souls clone, but that's not true at all. Code Vein, while it may be inspired by the Dark Souls franchise in terms of its combat, there's a lot more going for it. The story, which is always a big factor for me when playing JRPGs, is really good in Code Vein, and it's actually surprising as to how much of an emphasis there is on the story. Code Vein is all about vampires and can be a little edgy, but again, it really is engaging, especially if you like anime. Though, if there is one thing I think that really shines in Code Vein, is its character creation tools. Honestly, Code Vein has one of the best character creator tools on the entire market, so if you like designing characters, that's a really big plus here, and on top of that, it has fun, cooperative gameplay. VALKYRIA Chronicles is one of the more unique games on this list with not only its cel-shaded art style, but it's the combat that truly sets it apart from other games. It is a turn-based game, but instead of just standing in one spot, you actually have to navigate a war zone-like battlefield. This is why your positioning and how you decide to attack your opponent is extremely important. It's almost like playing a game of chess, and it is extremely strategic. With that said though, the story is also really good, so if you like engaging stories and strategical gameplay, then look no further than VALKYRIA Chronicles, and yes, whether you choose 1 or 4, there is no wrong decision here. They are both fantastic games. DISGAEA is one of the oddest franchises you're going to come across with a light-hearted story about demons, and it never takes itself too seriously. It's almost always goofy and trying to have fun. DISGAEA 5 is no exception to this rule, but even though it is goofy, you do come to love the characters and all of their different quirks. It is a tactical RPG with a lot of depth to the combat system as you chain attacks with your allies, and that is the thing about DISGAEA 5. Even though the story is enjoyable, the endgame for DISGAEA goes to the extremes as you can level up your characters to level 9,999, and not only that, this goes for weapons as well because they can also be leveled up. So even when you do beat this game, as long as you enjoy the combat, you can really make this game as long as you possibly want it to be. When it comes to some of the all-time great JRPGs, one game that really doesn't get enough love is Legend of Heroes: Trails in the Sky. Now, this game was actually originally made on the PlayStation Portable, and if I had to compare it to anything, I would kind of explain it as a fantasy epic novel. And what I mean by this is that it can be a slow-paced game with a grand adventure. This is a game that's split into 3 different chapters, or 3 separate games, though the 3rd chapter is a little bit different than the other 2. No spoilers here. But yeah, this is a very story-driven game with great characters, but I do like the combat as well. And if you do end up liking Trails in the Sky and its world, you may also end up liking Trails of Cold Steel. For the first time in the franchise, Monster Hunter World has really captivated its audience worldwide. Monster Hunter has always been a big franchise in Japan, but Monster Hunter World has exploded in the West now, and deservedly so. Monster Hunter World, of course, is all about hunting different monsters, and because the monster designs and their behavior is just so great and lifelike, I think that's really what makes Monster Hunter World just so good. Each monster does have their own unique behavior and may even hunt one another, but that would mean absolutely nothing if the game wasn't also fun, but of course, it is. You can choose your own class to change up how you play the game, and it's an extreme grind fest. See, by hunting monsters, you will gain valuable resources to level up and build new items. This is where the addiction for people comes in, and don't be surprised to play this game for several hundred hours, if not even more than that. As an added bonus, Monster Hunter World is built around having great cooperative gameplay, so make sure to bring a friend along for the fun if you do like those type of games. The first thing anybody and everybody notices about Octopath Traveler is its gorgeous art style mixing retro 2D sprites in an HD stylized 3D world. It is an absolutely stunning game to look at, but the thing that really stands out for me in Octopath Traveler is its turn-based combat. It does draw inspiration from games like Final Fantasy VI, but it's a joy to find and exploit an enemy's weakness. And though Octopath Traveler is a retro-style JRPG with a modern twist, it's a little unconventional in many other ways. See, in Octopath Traveler, you do have 8 separate protagonists, all with their own unique stories, and no, they don't really intersect with one another. You can choose to pick up a new traveler and do their story at your own pace. This, however, can have players a little bit mixed on how they feel about Octopath, because while some stories are told very well, there are others that are a little so-so. Nonetheless, I do think that Octopath Traveler is a great game, and I would love to see more games use this type of art style going forward. I was so happy to see the first Ni no Kuni make its way over to the PC platform last year, because this is actually one of my favorite JRPGs made within the last 10 years. It's a beautiful game to watch in motion and shares a lot in common with Studio Ghibli movies, and well, that's because its animations was worked on by Studio Ghibli. The cutscenes look fantastic in this game, but there is just so much detail in the world around you. This is immediately noticeable when you have Oliver exploring the town, and you can see there was a lot of love put into this game with the attention to detail for the world around you. The story is also a joy with a very charming, heart-wrenching storyline, and even the combat is a lot of fun. It has kind of a free-flowing combat system, and you can catch new familiars that are kind of similar to something like Pokemon, so much so that you can actually evolve them. Really though, I do think that Ni no Kuni: The Wrath of the White Witch is an immediate classic. If you follow gaming at all, there's a good chance that you may have heard of the Yakuza franchise in the last 5 or so years, and even though it's been around for much longer than that, its rise in popularity has really been increasing, and after playing it, it's not hard to see why. The story right off the bat is captivating, and that's a huge draw for me personally. I really love the story here as you play a new Yakuza. It also has a fun combat system, and it's very much an action-based RPG. This is not a turn-based game, and it actually did surprise me on how much RPG elements there are in Yakuza 0. It's all based off of money, but you use this money to acquire new fighting techniques, and its world is completely engrossing as well. I actually think that Yakuza 0 has one of the best realized worlds in all of gaming, because you do feel as if you are in Japan. And thanks to it having a ton of minigames, and I do mean a ton, it's also a fun world to explore. Dragon Quest may not always get the love and attention it deserves over in the West, but don't let that fool you, because Dragon Quest XI is one of the best turn-based JRPGs available on the market right now, and I do think it is the best turn-based JRPG made in recent years. This very much is a modern JRPG staying close to its roots with its combat, and while a lot of franchises are moving onto a bit of a more action-based combat system, Dragon Quest XI shows you exactly why, even in the year of 2020, this classic take on the genre is just still so endearing. It also helps that Dragon Quest XI has a great story and cast of characters, with, in my opinion, a lovable art style, especially if you like the Dragon Ball franchise. And don't worry, Dragon Quest XI can be played as a standalone title with no prior knowledge to any of the Dragon Quest franchise. Tales of Vesperia holds a special place in my heart. In fact, Vesperia has one of my favorite stories in all of JRPGs, and actually one of my favorite stories in all of video games, and I absolutely love the characters in this game. I think while some games may have an intriguing premise, the cast of characters don't always have great chemistry, but in Tales of Vesperia, they just mesh so well together. And even though this was originally released as an Xbox 360 exclusive, it still looks fantastic today thanks to its timeless art style. The combat is an added bonus with a more of a free-form combat system, but really if you do enjoy good story-driven games, Tales of Vesperia would be among the very best. There are no JRPG lists without Chrono Trigger. In fact, I know several of you watching this video would probably have put Chrono Trigger as the #1 game, and I completely understand why. Chrono Trigger was originally released way back in 1995, and even all these years later, it's still just as amazing as it ever was. It has a beautiful pixel art design by Toriyama, most well known for his work on Dragon Ball, and has some of the genre's best characters of all time. The story centers around time travel after accidentally creating a time rift, sending a girl Marley back in time. From this point forward, our protagonist Chrono sets forth to travel back in time to rescue Marley, though of course as many time travel stories goes, that is easier said than done as new problems arise. It really is well told though, with multiple endings, and the combat is really special in this game as well. You can actually see your enemies before ever fighting them, and there are no load screens when entering a battle. Once entering a battle, you're going to make quick decisions as you choose who to attack. I really like the fast-paced combat here though, but yeah, if you worry Chrono Trigger is just a nostalgic trip, don't, because it truly is a great game even if you've never played it before. Believe the hype. Dark Souls, without a doubt, has had a huge impact on the game industry. Its combat design has been revolutionary, and so much so that I feel like it has created a genre within itself. On a yearly basis, it feels like there are more and more Dark Souls clones coming to bat, but even to this day, nothing has surpassed it, and that's thanks to its brilliant level design as well as boss encounters. See, Dark Souls is well known for being a challenging franchise, and some of my most memorable gaming moments comes from fighting some of the legendary bosses within Dark Souls. Even then, regular enemies can be quite challenging as well, and in Dark Souls, you do need to take more of a methodical approach to combat rather than just mindlessly swinging your weapon. And that's the thing, weapon builds in Dark Souls can also dramatically change your combat and approach, so with that said, Dark Souls is not just one of JRPG's best, but it's actually one of the best games in the entire industry. Actually, I'm going to go even a step further, it is one of the best games of all time. NIER Automata may actually be my favorite game on this entire list. It's the perfect combination of gameplay, level design, and story. Throw in one of the best music soundtracks to ever be made, and you will find yourself playing a game that sticks in your memory forever. NIER Automata very much is an action-based RPG, though the gameplay does get switched up quite often, and you may find yourself in a shoot-'em-up scenario from time to time as well. And some of the locations in this game are just exceptionally done, and I think the Village Carnival place in particular is one of my favorite locations in all video games. Do keep one thing in mind though, when playing NIER Automata, when you reach the final credits, that is not the end of the game. I would highly suggest that you beat NIER Automata at least 3 times because each playthrough is different. I won't give any spoilers away, but you are in for a special treat if you do end up playing NIER Automata. And number 1 on this list goes to none other than Final Fantasy, though I could not narrow it down to just one game. There is no way I could choose just one Final Fantasy game for this entire list, because each game is just so special in their own way. There is a reason that I consider Final Fantasy to be the father of JRPGs, with so many other games being heavily inspired by it. Final Fantasy 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 12, 14, and 15 are all amazing games and could easily be considered the best. If you like old school games, 6 through 9 would be the perfect route to take. If you like PlayStation 2 type JRPGs, then 10 or 12. Then you have 15, which is a modern action RPG. Even 14, which is often excluded, may possibly be the best MMO on the entire market, or at least in terms of its story. In fact, 14 may have the best story in all Final Fantasy games as long as you can get by the original game into its expansions. Like I said, each Final Fantasy game is special in their own way. They have amazing stories, memorable worlds and characters, great combat. I mean, you really just can't go wrong here. Maybe one day I'll end up making a top 10 Final Fantasy list, but until then, just know that they're all great in their own way. Anyways though, that's it for this episode, but if I missed any of your favorite games, let me know in the comments below and help each other discover more games. With that said, if you liked the video, don't forget to hit the bell notification and subscribe button for more content just like this. Peace out.